Okay, guys. Oh, I'm excited about this message. I've been excited about it for some time now. The name of this simple little message is going to be called The Truth About Transgender Bathrooms. The truth about the transgender bathrooms. And let me just say real quick, I've been wanting to do this message for weeks now, but it always felt like it wasn't time just yet. Every time I thought about it, it was like there was another sermon idea that came to mind, that came to spirit that I really felt like I needed to talk about. But now I feel like it's finally time. I did the first sermon for this week, and now I'm on the second, and I feel like it's time, and I believe I have all that I really need to say on this matter. And so I'm very excited to finally get to do this message. But yeah, I'm just excited about it. Let me say this right here to let you know what this is about. I'm sure you probably already get it by the title, but let me say this. For those that are out of the loop, you've been living under a rock, you don't quite get it. If you paid attention to anything in the news, you know that there's this debate going on about transgender restrooms. And basically what it is there are people who believe that when they are out in public at a public place, the restroom should be set up to where pretty much any and everybody can go in it, regardless of what your gender is. So instead of having just a women's bathroom and a men's bathroom, it's just one bathroom for all. Okay? And so there's this debate going on. People have different opinions, different views on it. And what I'm here to talk to you about is there are actually two truths that I want to present to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give you one truth, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into some scripture, and I'm going to change the subject for a bit, but really, I'm really not going to change the subject, but you won't really see that till the end of the message when I tie it all together, and it'll all make sense. Now, let me say this. The first thing that I want to say about all this, first of all, there may be people who read the title of this or heard the title of this message, and maybe you've tuned in and you believe that because of who I am and because of what I stand for, you're probably going to assume right off the bat that you already know what my opinion on the transgender bathrooms is. You're going to say, well, you're part of the LGBT community, so obviously you're all for it and you're all about it, and you probably think that people who oppose this idea are against your personal human rights. Well, I'm here to tell you, no, that is not it at all. That is not my opinion. Right now, it's kind of made or set up to have you believe that if somebody is part of the LGBT community, they're all for the transgender bathrooms. They're all in agreement that this must happen. And if for anyone to say otherwise, they must be a bigot and they must be against our personal rights, right? And then it's set up to where you have people who believe different, people who believe, okay, we shouldn't have this happen. It should stay the way that it is, a guy's bathroom and a female's bathroom. And it's been set up to where either you're on the side of LGBT people or you're on the side of the heterosexual Christians, right? That's how it's being made to set up, basically. And so you have people over here on this side who would say, well, we don't think that everybody should go to the same restroom because, there may be some perverts that come in and take advantage of this new thing, and you have these men go into the bathroom and spy on women or try to touch little girls because they have easier access to them. And I would like to say to you, if that's what you believe, I totally understand. I totally actually agree with you, which might be something different quite different from what you probably expected me to say, because you probably assumed that I would get on here and yell about how y'all are being bigots and blah blah blah. No, you got some great points. You're right. Personally, I think that it's fine as it is right now myself. Just a guy's bathroom, women's bathroom, whatever. I just want to pee, but whatever. But you're right. That is something that could very well easily happen. But the people over here on this side also have a very good point when they say, well, if you're worried about perverts and creeps, you do realize that some of these same guys have been going into the bathrooms with your little boys, and so why are you just now being concerned about females being touched when little boys could have been touched in the men's bathroom as well? I mean, that's a very outstanding point as well. It does seem like people are now caring about what perverts do in the bathroom when there have been things that have already been playing out in the bathroom, but whatever. But still, you guys over here, you still got a lot of great points on why it should still be separate, and I totally understand that. But also want to give you my first truth about all this. And the first truth about the transgender bathrooms, the transgender restrooms is this. It's really an illusion. You might be thinking, what do you mean? Well, let me say this. I can be a bit of what is called a conspiracy theorist. You might know what that means, but for those of you who don't, a conspiracy theorist, they might believe things like this. You might hear them say things like this. They may believe in this thing called chemtrails, where planes are programmed through government things to fly through the air and spray down these chemicals that they really should not be allowed to spray, and it's something that can get in our systems and make us sick, but they only spray a small concentration level of the chemicals and elements that could hurt us. So since it's quote unquote not too highly detectable, it's still legal for them to do it, even though it shouldn't be. You might have people that will say they believe in something called HAARP, a HAARP machine, a machine created by the government to try to manipulate and change the weather patterns, and that it can cause natural disasters in places on purpose for their own agenda. You also have people that will believe, well, what if 9/11 really was a conspiracy? What if it really was an inside job? You'll have people that will question things and say, well, what's the real reason why we're still in war so much? Is it really just something we're doing for our own personal gain while we're acting like we really care about other countries? You'll have people that will say, well, I believe in certain secret societies like the Illuminati or Skull and Bones or Bohemian Grove and things of that nature. You'll have people that'll even say stuff to you like, you got reality and you've got illusion. Red pill, blue pill, which one you gonna pick? Stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that I believe in every little conspiracy theory that's out there, but I am, to a degree, a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I do believe that there are certain things that play out that are just terrible conspiracies against the people, against the general public. And a lot of times illusions are set in place to make you believe certain things or feel a certain way. But in reality, it's not all as it seems. It's just something done, some type of propaganda or some type of scare tactic to get you to believe something or to look at something a certain way, to get a certain thing done, a certain mindset implanted for a hidden agenda. And I bring all that up to say this. It's really an illusion. It's really something set in place to keep you unfocused, to keep you distracted from more important things. This whole transgender bathroom thing. And I'll give you an outstanding example, and some of you who might not even consider yourselves a conspiracy theorist will probably agree with me on this one. You'll probably be like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Or you might think, well, I never thought about it that way, but I actually really agree with you. And it's this. You've had for a while this whole Black Lives Matter movement going on, right? Okay, now check this out. Let me ask you this. Do you really feel like police brutality and white on black crime has really escalated that much? Or do you believe this? Do you believe that there's black on black crime and white on white crime and black on white crime just as much as there is white on black crime and police brutality? But do you think that it seems like the news and the media have gone out of their way to show only black people done wrong or minorities done wrong, or to go out of their way showing the police doing things that they shouldn't? Exactly. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, there is a white on black crime. Yes, there is police brutality. There's racism to where the police might go into black neighborhoods and do them wrong. Yes, I totally agree. I believe it's out there, but it's not to the extreme that the media, that the TV portrays it to be. There's all kinds of news stories that could be covered on different types of crimes, but I believe, like many of you probably also have caught on, that what they've done is they've gone out of the way to show you things that could be considered racist, to show you stories of the police doing wrong. Now, there's all these stories, and you can go on the internet, you can go on YouTube and look. There's all kinds of stories of police doing great things for people, even people in black neighborhoods. There's all kinds of black on black crime. There's all kinds of different things going on, good and bad. But the media at the moment, especially this year, has really gone out of its way to just show you as much as they can of the things that will make the whites and the police seem racist and bad. They're going out of their way to emphasize that. Why? To keep America more and more racially charged, to cause this racial tension and this racial divide. It's there to keep everybody angry and wound up, right? Come on. So that people can be distracted from bigger pictures. So whenever they get ready to do things like pass laws or do things, get ready to start up other wars or other things in other places, whenever they get ready to do things that the people might protest, they do things like emphasize all these hand-picked stories from across the country of white on black police brutality and all that, but they do it to keep you distracted and to keep you mad about the so-called racist explosion in the country, so that you don't pay attention to all the other things that they're doing that you probably would protest them about. It's an illusion. It's a setup to keep people plotted against each other and distracted from reality, distracted from the big picture, distracted from the things going on that we should be paid attention to. That's it. It's a setup, it's an illusion to keep the country divided, to make us feel like we need more help, more assistance from the government or from whoever, to make us feel like we can't just do it on our own. We need a special leader to come in and fix it, and the only one that's really going to fix anything is Jesus when he comes back. But that's besides the point. That's all that it is. And some of y'all have figured this out. You figured it out. It's just done on purpose to keep you distracted from reality. That's all that it is. Even with The whole abortion thing. The new thing is to try to say it's an attack on women, when really we're trying to keep the unborn from being attacked. So the new thing is to say it's against women's rights. Even though it's not an attack on women, we're just concerned about the one that hasn't had a chance at life yet. But we just go on and on now about how it's anti-woman and you're against women's rights. See, that's all that it is. What we're doing, what's being played out before our eyes, is that the people running the show, the powers of darkness behind the scenes, using people as puppets, is causing the country to go back in time from the progress that it's made, to where all the people that have been done wrong, the groups of people that have been done wrong, have to be made to feel like now they're being done wrong again and their rights, civil rights, are being taken away again. That's what it's about. Women had a hard time getting their rights, so now they're trying to push everything back to make women feel like they have to stand up for something again. And you got all these ultra masculine feminists out there ready to just box, and fight you over every little thing when it's not that serious. And then you've got more black people feeling like they have to have the fist up and go on and on about the white man and the white devil and all this and that. And so now, of course, the gay people, we've got more rights now to get married. So now they want to make us feel like stuff is being done to us. And we got to get mad too. We got to get over the top angry. Right? So you attack one member of LGBT, we got to feel like you're attacking all of us. And we all got to be offended. And we all got to call everybody bigots. So now it's been designed to make us feel like we all have to be for the transgender bathrooms, because it's got to be our way of saying that we're standing up for our rights. Even if we could care less, it's designed to make us feel like it's something that we've got to fight about. That's it. It's all an illusion to keep everybody distracted. Everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what color, what gender, what race, what background, whatever. It's something to keep everybody distracted and divided so that more control can be given over to government and less control is being given over to God. That's it. It's just a tool. It's an illusion. That's all there is to it, folks. Something else that I want to say is you'd be surprised how many LGBT people really don't care about the whole bathroom thing. They're not going out there fighting for their so-called right to have this bathroom. Really not. In fact, you'd be surprised of how many of us are actually just as tired of hearing about it in the news as straight people are. And also, it's one more illusion, because this is at a time where a lot of people are waking up to the truth about what the Bible actually really has to say about homosexuality, and that it really isn't so anti-gay the way people have made it out to be for quite some time now. So this is the perfect time. Come on. This is the perfect time for the enemy to use tactics and to get people wound up to make it gays against Christians. As if you can't be both. That's what it's really about as well. It's just more stuff to keep everybody at ends, to keep everybody from coming together and uniting, to make it harder for us to be ready, for the church to be ready when Christ comes back. That's all it is. It's all illusion. It's all stuff, all of it, to keep everybody wound up and mad. So now instead of saying, hey, we're all equal no matter what color, you got more black people taking steps back saying, oh no, they're white devils, right? Remember that when blacks used to say that? So now you hear them saying it again. See what I'm saying? All it is keeping that divide going. Out of all the progress this country's made, now it's just about keeping us divided and mad and distracted from what's really going on. That's it, folks. That's the truth. It's an illusion. I really could care less. And when I first heard about this transgender bathroom thing, I thought it was good because I was under the impression that we were going to have three bathrooms, you know, the women's and men's bathroom still, but also the transgender one. So I thought, hey, this is a good thing because it's a win for everybody, right? It's a win. Everybody, because everybody gets what they want. You don't want to be in the bathroom with certain type of folks, you don't have to, because you got like three to choose from. So I'm thinking, hey, why not? Sounds like a good idea. Until I started to pay attention more and realize, wait a minute, they're just trying to have just one altogether. And then I wasn't excited about that. But I do think a lot of people would agree with me when I say having three like that actually will be kind of really cool because everybody wins. But that's just me. I'm just an everybody wins kind of person. You know, why not everybody win? I don't know. But anyway, whatever. So now that I made the first truth, I've given you the first truth about the transgender bathrooms or restrooms, whatever. Now let's get into scripture, and I'm going to kind of change the subject, but like I said, not really. It'll make sense. Just trust me on this one. Go to Ezekiel chapter 16. I'll take a sip of water while y'all are getting there if you're following along. Ezekiel 16, you have verses 49 and 50 I want to look at. It says, behold, this was the iniquity of the sister Sodom. Sodom is in Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, listen. Pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw good. So now I want to talk to you about Sodom and Gomorrah. Like I said, this seems way off subject, but I promise it's not. Just bear with me because it's all going to come together. Let's talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, but more specifically, the truth about Sodom and Gomorrah. You have in Genesis 19, chapter 19, I believe, you hear it talking about the story of Sodom and how it was destroyed. And a lot of times, and I'm sure you've heard the story, but a lot of times when people mention the story, you will hear people say that it's thanks to gays or homosexuality that the whole city of Sodom was destroyed. And the funny thing about it is when people talk about that story or minister on it, they never come here to Ezekiel where God actually tells you why in detail it was destroyed. And it had nothing to do with homosexuality. It was a whole bunch of other stuff, what I just read. But you never really hear it be talked about. Nobody wants to go and look at these two verses ever. Ever. Let's face it, right? Unless they're being honest about what the story is really about. Unless they're going to be honest and tell you that homosexuality is not what the story is really about. Right? Come on. So, what basically actually happens in this story, if you take everything into consideration, is this. You've got Lot. He's in this city. And you've got these men, and they're really angels, but they're coming across as men entering into this city. Now, here's the thing. During this time, in this biblical time of this story playing out, hospitality was a big deal. In other words, being welcoming to strangers was a big deal. Being willing to feed the stranger, to clothe them, to welcome them into your home, to stay the night if need be. Just being good to people, even being good to anyone from a stranger or a foreigner, someone traveling to different lands, to just your neighbor, someone that already lived there in your neck of the woods. Kind of like here in the South, here in America, we take pride in what we call Southern hospitality. We think we're just good. We just look at it as we got the best manners out of everybody. We're big on yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, holding doors open for people, welcoming people. That's how we are, being good to people, especially if there's somebody you don't know, going out of your way to just greet them and make them feel welcome. Well, in this time period of this story, that was a big deal. And that's the reason why when Lot welcomed those two men into his home and they turned them down, he still was like, no, come on in. Because he knew that doing that, showing them that act of kindness, was a big deal. The other thing that is not always explained to you is this, that during those times there was something that guys used to do when they wanted to humiliate other guys. If they were in a battle and they were battling it out with some guys and they won the fight, or if they just simply wanted to be rude to strangers and people they didn't know, one of the things that they wanted to do to embarrass the people that they viewed as the opponent or just simply the stranger is that they would take them down and they would rape them. It wasn't a sexual orientation thing. It wasn't that they were gay. It wasn't that they were attracted to any of the men on the opposing team. It was something done to humiliate them. It was a way of saying, look, we're putting you into a woman's position because, just like I do, a lot of times when you look into the Old Testament, a lot of times, it's like women are kind of like second-class citizens sometimes. They're not viewed on the level that men are a lot of times. So that was a way of humiliating or embarrassing a guy, would be to put him in a very vulnerable feminine women's position, to rape them. So that's what they would do. If they won a battle against somebody, that's what they might do, would be to rape them, even in just trying to simply embarrass them. And so in the story of Sodom, that's what the men did. They came up to Lot's house wanting to abuse those men. They didn't say anything like, oh man, those men in there sure look good, we want to have a good time with them. No, they were being mean and aggressive. And when Lot protested, the men at the door, if you remember, they were even telling them, hey, if you don't let us have our way with that God, we'll do even worse with you. That doesn't sound like something that's going to be said by somebody that's, turned on by somebody. It just sounds like somebody being a bully. And that's what they were doing. They were simply being bullies. So with that said, in these verses I just read, we see the truth that it's about, really, if you want to summarize it, it's about inhospitality, because it's talking about people who are full of bread but not wanting to feed the hungry, not wanting to give a handout to help the poor and the needy, people being arrogant and thinking that they're better than other people. So in other words, these two verses I just read goes hand in hand with the biblical context of the story. It all adds up. It all makes sense. It all goes together. So with that said, and here's the funny thing, there may be a lot of LGBT people that when people talk about the story of Sodom, they might cringe. They don't want to hear it because of what they've been told it's about. But because I actually read it, and because I actually did some research and to figure out what was really going on, and because I read more of the Bible, which is something we don't want to do is read it at all, but I read more and then eventually got to Ezekiel, where I saw that God actually tells you why it was destroyed in detail, for real, like why he did it. Not what people say happened, but what God himself saying why he destroyed it. And then even going backwards to the chapter before, chapter 18, the chapter before where the story of Sodom took place. And then I read where Abraham is even debating with God on trying to get him to save the city of Sodom, which shows that God was already going to destroy it before the men came to the door to try to rape those guys. So he had already had it in mind before that even happened to destroy the city, which further emphasizes the obvious point that being gay had nothing to do with it being destroyed. Point blank, the signs are all there if you read all of it in context. And so with that said, that's actually one of my favorite stories. A story that used to make me uncomfortable is now one of my favorites. How can you not love the story of Sodom? It's hilarious when you get the whole thing. Think about it. God's planning on destroying a city. You've got Abraham that's saying, debating with God, trying to wager with him, trying to say, okay, if I find this amount of people in there that are righteous, will you save the city? And God's like, okay, sure, if you can find, 50 people that are good, that are righteous, I won't destroy it. And you see Abraham taking the number down lower and lower and lower, saying, well, what about this amount of people? Well, what about this amount of people? Well, what about this amount of people? And it's funny if you get what's going on, because God says, I'm going to destroy these people. Abraham's saying, what if you find a certain amount that can be good enough to save the city? And what's happening is, it's like God saying, okay, sure, I'll tell you what, if you can actually find that amount of people, sure, I'll save it. In other words, it's like God already knows that he ain't going to find that amount of people. So that's why he's letting him go ahead and make these deals with him. Like, well, if I find this amount, if I find that amount, God, he already knows he ain't going to find them. And so Abraham figures it out. So he keeps taking the number lower and lower and lower. And God's just like, okay, yeah, okay, sure. That number too. And that number two, and that number two, because he already knows, it's going to be destroyed. You know what I mean? So really, when you get what's going on, it's actually really funny. Then you get into the story, and you clearly see that these guys are bullies. They're not being very hospitable towards these strangers. So when the strangers reveal who they are to Lot, and they're saying, okay, you get your wife and your family and head on out. We got to head on out of here. And they're walking away. And it's already been said not to look back. And Lot's wife looks back, and she gets turned into a giant pillar of salt, which is the craziest thing ever. Like, how is that not entertaining? Like, you just look back at something, and all of a sudden you're just frozen and you're just salt. Like, can somebody just put their finger on you and just go and eat you? Like there's so many things that come to mind when you read this story, because it's such a crazy story. But here's the best part, and the best part doesn't even get mentioned to you, because when we tell that story, we stop right there at Lot's wife getting turned into salt, and we say that's the end. But that's not even the end of the story, because the real end of the story is hilarious. It's great. Lot and his daughters, they keep going because they don't look back. And they get up there in these caves, in these hills, and his two young daughters, they're thinking, okay, we got to reproduce, because ain't nobody else around here. Where we're from has been destroyed. We got to reproduce. So they get their dad, Lot, drunk, and they take turns having sex with him to get pregnant by him. Got him so drunk he don't even know what's going on. So they really, the weird thing about it is they actually raped their dad. If you really want to be honest about it, they took advantage of him. And you might say, well, where's the humor in that? Well, here's the thing. A lot of people get mad about the story of Sodom, because they'll say, well, why would God go ahead and save Lot and consider him righteous when he offered his own daughters up, his virgin daughters up, to those guys? He offered them to the guys at the door and said, hey, take my daughters, but leave these nice men that just came into this town alone. Leave these strangers alone. Why would God help this guy out when he's throwing his own daughters out there, getting them ready to be raped possibly? But if you actually finish the story, which nobody ever does many times, you finish it, and then you find out they end up raping him. His daughters end up raping him. It's hilarious. It's like guys, when you get the whole story and you get it in its actual proper context of what it's really about, how can you not find this one of the coolest stories in the Bible? I mean, it's funny. It's got all this, it's suspenseful. It's got all this crazy action going on. How can you not like it? It's great if you get it in context, if you get the whole story. One of my favorites, because I get it. You know what I mean? So, with that said, let me say this. Here's the truth about Sodom. The church, many churches are concerned that America is going to be the new Sodom because gay people can get married. Oh no. But the truth is, when you know the actual reality of that story, when you get the actual proper context of the story, the truth is, the cold hard truth is, some of our churches are actually Sodom. Some of our churches are Sodom because the same pride and arrogance and acting like we're better than people and not wanting to be good to others and not wanting to show hospitality, that type of mindset, there are some out there, quite a few out there that are just like that. Churches where they act like they're better. They act holier than thou. They have this arrogance and an air and a pride about them that makes them feel better, that makes them feel holier, not just than people of the world, but people of other churches. They get to a point where they compare their church to the one up the street or the one across the highway. They want to compare and contrast. And 1 minute we'll preach something along the lines of, well, we're in it together. It's not a competition. It's about saving souls. And then the next minute we're doing and saying things the complete opposite. All we want to do is compare and say, well, I think my pastor could have preached that message better than them. Well, I think Reverend or Deacon so-and-so or prophetess blah, blah, blah should have had that opportunity. And I think God should have used that person instead of that person over there because I just like how they minister. I just like the way they preach. It's so much more entertaining when they do it than when that person over there does it. And then it's a fight over who's going to have the biggest congregation. And instead of being happy about the numbers coming in because it means there are more people being saved and more people getting to know Christ, we just make it a competition. All we want to do is brag and boast about who has the most people, who has the biggest numbers, who has the biggest church. So it's not about having a bigger church to fit more people. It's about having a bigger church to show off. And we don't want to help anybody. We don't want to be good to folks that don't go to our church. In fact, you got a lot of folks who, if they know somebody who used to go to their church, but don't go anymore, they act like they can't even say hi to them in the grocery store. They'll look at you funny and wonder why you're even saying anything to them. They act like you betrayed them or stabbed them in the back just because you don't go to church there anymore, when what they should be doing is asking if you're at least still in church somewhere. Because that's all that matters. All that matters is, are you still in church somewhere? Are you still serving God? Are you still a Christian? You should be asking, you haven't turned your back on God, have you? Are you still serving Him? Are you still in church somewhere? And if the answer is yes, you should be happy. You should be excited that it's not somebody that just went astray. They just went somewhere else to get fed. Okay, so what? The count for heaven is still going up. So we care more about things like that than the amount of people that could be going to hell. And also, even though we have the list of sins in those couple of verses, if there is a sexual sin that's the problem of Sodom, the answer to that should be obvious. It's not being gay, it's rape. And that's something else that we see, or at least we've seen it in the news, of that being an issue in the church world. We've seen over the years quite a bit of preachers, pastors, reverends, deacons, whatever title, bishop, whatever title we want to use, people high up in the church who may rape or molest young people, or get with somebody else's wife and take advantage of them. We've seen people lose positions over stuff like that, forcing themselves on others, which is what Sodom is really about. So now we'll have people in churches who know what's going on behind the scenes, who know what's really going on and won't speak out about it because they want to remain comfortable because they're more in love with that church, than they are with God. But yet will shout somebody down and clap them down when they talk bad about gay people or the direction the country's headed in. And it's a bit of a hypocrisy. And what I mean by that is this: you may have people who, and I'm not saying every church or all churches, but some, you may have people in church who know what's going on behind the scenes. They may know that they may have a relative in the church who may be getting sexually abused by somebody higher up in the church. They'll know it. They won't say anything because they'll look at it as, well, if I speak out, I might lose my position of being able to preach here. I'm not the head preacher. I'm just here. And so I need to just respect everybody up higher than me. I don't need to say anything. Yeah, I know somebody that I love is being done wrong, but the reality of it is, this is a good position. I don't want to lose it. It makes me look good. So I'm going to turn a blind eye and keep getting on this stage because it's my chance to feel like a somebody. You might have people who have the mindset of, well, I know my own child is being harassed and bullied by people higher up in the church, but I don't want to say anything because I get to come on the platform and play an instrument. I get to play in the worship band. And so if I speak out and say something, I might have to step down. But I don't want to because I want to be up here so bad. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, knowing that my own seed line is being taken advantage of and bullied and harassed and abused in some kind of a way, just so I can feel good, so that people can see me on this stage in this church. You may have somebody that has the mindset of, well, I get to be over the youth. And, my pastor has taken advantage of me, raped me, molested me, and I know that there's a chance he could be doing it to some of these youth right here. And so if anybody should be the one to stand up and say something and try to make a stop to it, it should be me, because I'm the one that's supposed to be leading them. I'm the one that's supposed to be setting the example, and I'm the one who knows what they might be going through. So I should be the main one. I should be numero uno, the first person to go and say something and to try to stop this atrocity. But if I say something, I might lose this position. And I don't want to be moved out of the position of being over the youth, because I love them. They're my babies. I love them so much. But in reality, if they're your babies and you love them so much, you would say something so that the same things that happen to you won't happen to them somewhere along the line, because it could be happening right now. But oh no, we can't say anything. We got to be quiet. We got to play the role, play the part. We got to do all these things because this is it right here. This is the biggest church. This is the prettiest church. This is the church that has the most people. This is rumored to be the most anointed church. This is supposed to be the church that's got so much going for them. So we'll use all these different excuses, excuse after excuse after excuse, to not stand up for ourselves, to not stand up for others that are being done wrong. We won't say a word, and the whole church will become a type of Sodom. But no one will say anything. But the same people that do these things, that do the abusing, that do the bullying, that do the verbal, physical, mental, or sexual abusing, can get on the stage and talk bad about gays, and talk about the country and the Supreme Court, and talk about how it's going to be Sodom, and talk about perverts and this and that. And we'll clap and we'll get up and shout them down, knowing that the same thing that they're yelling and screaming about is the same thing that goes on behind the scenes, the same things that they themselves are doing. And the ironic thing is, the funny thing is, what it does is it causes the church to hold the world at a higher standard than the church. I'm going to say that again. It causes the church to hold the world at a higher standard than the church. What do you mean? Well, as we say all the time, yeah, we're in the world, but we're not supposed to be of the world. We're supposed to be held at a higher standard in Christ. And so there are times when you'll hear people say, well, you know, that might be what the world is doing, but we're the church. We can't get involved in that, right? Which makes sense. But here's the thing on this particular issue. When we get in this mode where we sit back and don't speak out against people doing these things in the church, the stuff that I just got done describing, being the real modern day sodomites, basically, and they go and get on the stage and start yelling and screaming about gay people and people they think are perverts, and oh, you know, they're being bullies and they're persecuting us and they want to rape us and molest our kids, but behind the scenes that's exactly what they're doing. When you do that, when they do that, and we sit back and know it and don't say anything, what you're actually doing is you're watching this happen. You're watching that person basically say this. Those people out there in the world, they need to do better. This isn't right. What they're doing ain't right. They need to stop it. It's going to make this country go downhill. Blah, 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 blah. They need a standard. The standard's up here for them. They're not meeting the standard. But, you know, I'm doing these things and y'all are doing these things, and I'm expecting everybody to keep quiet about all this stuff, and we're not going to address it and we're not going to say anything. But those people out there in the world, they better not do that. Do you see what I'm saying? So now you set it up to where the roles are reversed. And you can't blame the world, it's us. Let's be real, because we're accepting it. So when you see these things play out in our churches and we accept these things, guess what? You are now holding the world to a higher standard than the church, when we know it's supposed to be the opposite. You'd say no to them and wag your finger and you know, naysay them, and you're doing the same stuff. And it's not like, oh, well, we all make mistakes. No, when you continuously do it and do it and do it and do it and do it, and there's no remorse and no repentance, it's not a mistake. It's just something you feel like you should be able to get away with just because you're you, because you have a position or a title, and nobody should tell you anything, right? When we allow that to happen, you have set it up to where you're holding the world at the higher standard. So if they're supposed to hold the standard, what about us? How are we supposed to be the salt of the earth? How are we supposed to be the salt of the earth? We can be salt all day, but when we lose our flavor, when we lose our savor, then what? It's pointless. Where's our flavor at? Where's our savor at? Because we are putting the world on the pedestal now. We are trying to raise the bar for the world that we're supposed to be trying to reach. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Was that a wake-up call? It's reality. It is reality. We have set it up to where we are holding the world at the highest standard, and we can drop ours lower and lower out of comfort, out of feeling like we can belong somewhere, out of trying to look good and impress the people, making sure we get the high fives and the pats on the backs and the thumbs up. That's what we've done. So it causes us to become the actual Sodom, the church to become the actual Sodom, which we don't want to see it that way, but that's what we're doing. And so with that said, this takes me to my final point, and I'll wrap this up. Like I said, there's one more truth about the transgender bathrooms, the transgender restrooms, and it's this. Just like how some of our churches have become Sodom, the truth about the transgender bathrooms is some of our churches are the transgender bathrooms. You might be saying, what do you mean? Well, think about what I just said. The same thing, and this is what I'm getting at, the same things that we're afraid might happen in those bathrooms, in those transgender bathrooms where everybody can go in, the same things that we're worried will happen in there could be happening in our very own churches. And we could know it and not say anything. But we're mad about it happening in the world, but we're not upset about it happening in the house of God. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Was that a wake-up call? Perhaps. Perhaps. This is not an attack. This is not me beating anybody down and causing condemnation. I'm not cussing anybody out. I'm not talking down to you and being all like, oh, you idiot, blah, blah, blah. No. This is a wake up. I'm not putting you down. I'm waking you up. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to make you think. See, I'm not belittling you, because if I was belittling you, I would just tell you to sit down and shut up, and you better listen to this, and there ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But what I'm actually doing is I'm trying to get you to wake up. I guess that's how conspiracy theorists are anyway, right? They want you to wake up about what's really going on. So really, I'm not the bad guy. I'm trying to wake you up out of this slumber that many of us in the church are in, that many of us choose to be in, actually. I'm waking you up out of this little slumber party we got going on, this spirit of slumber that we're so cool with for some reason. I'm shaking you up a bit and saying, hey, wake up. Look at what's really going on. I'm not attacking anybody. This is not condemnation. This is a wake-up call. It's not a thing where you are supposed to get offended. This isn't a thing where you're supposed to get all in your feelings and emotions and yell and scream and lash out. That's not what this is. This is not time to let a spirit of offense come in. If this doesn't apply to you, no reason to be offended. If it does apply to you, you might be offended, but let me reassure you, there's no point in being offended. This is a wake-up call. This is a moment for us to rise back up to the occasion and be the ones to set the bar. So if I'm waking you up and trying to raise you back up to the bar, the standard that we're supposed to be at, why even try to call this bashing? Why even try to call this condemnation and a beat down and tearing you down when I'm saying we need to rise up? We need to rise to the occasion. We need to at least try to rise up somewhat to the standard that we've set. We're the ones as Christians who are supposed to be setting the example in what we call this so-called Christian nation. But when people walk in, they see that it's all the same. That a lot of times we're just as bad, if not worse, than the world itself. So again, the same things that we're concerned might happen in these transgender bathrooms. Perverts coming in and looking at women and touching little girls and this and that. If we know these things are going on in our churches and we don't say anything, but we listen to the same people preach against the world doing those things, even though they're doing it and they don't see an issue with them doing it, then what you do is you set your own church up to become the quote-unquote transgender bathroom, the quote-unquote modern-day Sodom. That's what you're doing. Think about it. Because, let me say this too. This reminds me of a sermon I did not too long ago. And if I remember correctly, it was called The Best It's Ever Gonna Get. And I talked about David's kids, and one of them was this girl named Tamar, and she had two brothers. And brother one raped Tamar. And then brother two, he comes and investigates, and he's wanting to know, hey, did he force himself on you? And before he can really listen to Tamar's response, he's just like, no, listen, don't. If he did, don't say anything. Don't say nothing, because it could look bad on all of us. It's not going to be a good thing for any of us. You're going to ruin this for us. Just don't say anything. Just keep it quiet. And I explained that he had that it's the best it's ever going to get mentality. In other words, things are looking good for us folk here. So if you speak out, it might look bad on all of us. So just keep your mouth shut. Keep it to yourself. Just push it in the back of your mind and act like it's not a big deal. Because we don't need what we got going on here ruined. And that's how some of our churches has become. Let's not deal with our own issues. We know we're being a bit hypocritical. We put people down in the world for doing the very things that we're doing, and we're not repentive about it. It's not a mistake. It's just a continual, purposeful thing. But we don't want anybody to speak out and try to say, hey, let's do what God would want us to do, because, well, it'll make us look bad, and we just need you to be quiet. And so you have churches full of Tamars. And I want to say this, it's not just really about the rape, because she was taken advantage of. But when you look at Tamar, you have to realize that there are so many different ways a person can be taken advantage of other than just sexually. There's so many ways to take advantage of people. And one of the ways that a lot of gays in the church get taken advantage of is you'll have people. They'll know the truth about homosexuality. God's already revealed to them that the church has been saying some stuff wrong. And they may see that they have quite a bit of gay people in their church that they could tell the truth to. But instead, because of the fear of making some folks uncomfortable, and because of the fear of not getting as many claps or pats on the backs or high fives or thumbs up, all because of the fear of little things, they won't tell those people the truth. They won't love them for who they are, for who God created them to be. But they'll see how talented these gay people are. They'll see how anointed some of these gay people are, and so they'll be quick to put them on the stage, to have them play the drums and the piano and the keyboard and the guitar and the bass. They'll be quick to have them go up there and be, that flamboyant choir director. They'll have them go be all these things and be very active in the church, and they'll get as much work out of them as they can, and they'll suck them dry for all their talents and all their gifts that God has given them. But they won't tell them the truth about themselves and love them for who they are. They want all their God-given talents, but they don't want to love them for who God made them to be. And so when someone decides to stand up for themselves and say, hey, here's the truth. I already know you know the truth. You just don't want to say it, but here's the truth. And this is me. This is who I am. I'm not doing anything wrong. And all I want to do is serve God. You'll have people that'll take a person like that, do all they can to shut them up, and take them off the stage and push them as far as they can to the back of the line and turn around and grab somebody else that will play the part, that will will play the role. There will be the marionette doll on the string. There will be the puppet that they can put their hand up there behind and talk through them. They'll take that one and pull them on along, and they'll join the church one week, and then the next week they'll be active in every activity they have, and everybody will make sure that they're active in everything because it's their way of rewarding them for playing the role and playing the part. And they take the person who wants to stand up for themselves and not be bullied and not taken advantage of, and they'll push them and push them and push them to the far back of the line as a way of saying, this is your punishment for not letting me run you over. This is your punishment for not playing this role. And so then you have that little LGBT person in the background sitting somewhere with their head in their hand crying, kind of like how Tamar, when she was taken advantage of, and no one would hear her out. No one would fight for her or stand up for her. It says that she was left with her head in her hand, sobbing. Taken advantage of and pushed to the side. A lot of these LGBT people are the modern day Tamars in the church world. And the church itself has become the Sodom, the modern day transgender bathrooms. And no one cares. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the cold, hard truth. You don't believe that some of us are Tamars? You don't believe that when we stand up for ourselves, we can get taken and pushed to the back of the line and neglected and rejected by the same people that once said they had your back and that once tried to say, I do want to help you and raise you up in the ministry? You don't believe that? Well, if you're watching this video, you're looking at somebody who's been through it. I am a Tamar. I have been through it. So I can't make this up. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Heavenly Father, I thank you for another time to minister another word. I pray that this message would be one that reaches out to many people, that it grabs people's attention, that it wakes people up, that people would come and embrace this word, that people would accept the wake-up call, that people would not take this as a beat down or a tear down, but as a wake-up and a lifting up and a desire to want the things of you more and to want to try to go after that standard that we as Christians are supposed to at least try to go after, so that we can be the salt of this earth, so that we can have our flavor, so that we can have our savor, so that we can get ready for our Savior to return, because he is the true life saver. I give you all the praise, the glory, and honor, Father. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.